welcome to Consulting Talk Live. My name is Russell Pearson. It is a pleasure to have you here, whether you are here live right now or whether you are watching this in replay. This episode and this show in general is all about consultants and consultants running businesses and questions that you are asking about either how to do that or how to evolve that or how to improve that in any way. Again, my name is Russell Pearson. For the last 30 years, I've been working mainly in the spaces of promotional marketing and sales, but certainly business growth. And for the last 20 years, I've been running a business doing just that. So today's show is just going to be an impromptu thing where I answer your questions. I've got a bunch of questions that we've got in the bank, but I love to receive your questions as well. So if you'd like to go to consultingquestions.com, and I'll actually add that in the chat so that you can always go to it. So consultingquestions.com, and you can add your questions too. So we read them out on the show, and you can choose whether you want them to be anonymous or not. That's completely up to you, but these are going to be massive benefit to you and obviously to other consultants who are watching as well. So today's question comes from Kian, and Kian's one of the fantastic people who works with us in the Forge Business Program. And if you don't know what that is, that's about it's a program to accelerate your business. Really, it's about the doubling or maybe even going bigger with your business, moving it to a place of either exit or lifestyle, right? You get to decide which sort of business you have. And she asked the question, how to train a team of consultants to deliver strategy and expertise versus service delivery. And completely understand why she's asking that question, because number one, she's working to exit her business. But the awesome distinction in that is that there's service delivery, in other words, doing things for you. And then there's the expertise and the strategy, which is really, we're not doing them for somebody. Ideally, we should be doing it at the most. We're doing it with a client. And so how do we go about training someone to do that? Because the challenge that happens is, let's say that we decide that, all right, well, we want to get another staff member in. Are we going to try to find unicorns who are like the cloning of us? Or are we going to find someone who could work at McDonald's and then sort of systemize the whole thing? It's sort of like this balance of how we want to run our business. Well, the challenge that comes from cloning yourself, in other words, finding someone who is as good as you, is that there is a reason why you started your business. Most founders are better than not just the average employee, than most good employees. They're usually working at a pace that's not even 2 times as fast or 2 times as effective, but usually 3 times. And that's before they leave the employment opportunity that they're in. They usually leave that because they know that they can do better on their own. And then they get out into the real world and they know that was an interesting choice that they just made. And then they realize there's all these hats they've got to wear. So what happens in the first couple of years of a business is that someone who's already a high performer goes out and realizes that they're now a small fish in a big pond, and they start learning these skills and these lessons and this understanding of how to act as a business person, which means that they're not just 3 times as effective as they when they're an employee. They become like 10 times as effective, and then they think that they can just find someone else just like that. But that doesn't tend to be the case. Usually when you're looking to offload a role that the founder is doing, you usually need to break it up into 2 or 3 parts to find people who have real expertise and experience in those different areas. So when it comes to how do we bring people in to do the thinking side of the work that we do, it can be one of the hardest pieces. But there is a way to make it happen. And it's not about trying to, I think, find mentors for your clients, because that comes with deep expertise, deep experience. By the way, anybody who's watching this, if you want to put a question in and actually be part of the show, I would love you to do that. And if you are watching, even just type your name in or just say hello, just so that I know that you're engaging in the content. The challenge that happens with the employee who's moving into strategy is, when you've done it in a way that you're mentoring the client, which means that you're using past experiences to share how you've done things in the past and past experiences to show the way forward, that this is going to be like that. It means that you need to find someone who has the same level of depth of experience as you, which is very difficult, nearly impossible. And so, a far better way is to actually start looking at how you do what you do. And this is a large reason why we look to create processes, why we look to create systems, is because we need to create something that is replicatable. The majority of consultants, especially those who are solo consultants running their own practice, don't move to the point of systemization and even creating solid processes because it's more difficult than doing what they're already doing, which is this acting naturally. Right? They can do the job, sure. But by putting the system and process in, you're allowing someone else to follow what you do and get a similar, if not the same, result. So the first thing you need to do is understand what it is that you're doing that is being effective. Now, there are systems and processes and frameworks already out there in the consulting world. And a lot of those people, whether they be management consultants, consultants working as employed consultants, are often trained in those things. And that's how you, as a solo practitioner, can bring other people in as well. You can train those people in those systems or use those systems and processes and frameworks to deliver what you do. So the key in all of this is, can we do it without losing the magic? What is the secret sauce that enables you to get what you get? And so it becomes quite difficult for someone who is a consultant first to do some of those things. One of the occupations that is usually very good at doing this is the designer trainer, and so the person who designs training, because that's what basically, you're looking at a skill set. You're looking at an outcome creation, and you're working backwards to say, what is it that we did? How did we go about doing that to enable that outcome? And so you ideally need to go through your process, even if you don't have one, and say, what is it that I'm doing at every single stage? Create milestones through the process. And so that's why programs like mine, whether it be the Forge or the Consulting Guild, we create frameworks and systems and processes so that you can actually put people into a model that they can use the model, and then effectively step above the model to do more effective things. Good question, Andreas. I'll answer that one in a second about the pricing. But the key with bringing people into strategy is to understand that service delivery is doing a bunch of different things. All right, so you can usually train someone or put a system in place or a process in place to do it. Often consultants don't realize that they are still doing things to enable the client to get an outcome. And so it's about identifying what are those specific things that they're doing, either their processes like workshops. What is the steps that they're taking people through in a workshop? How do they get to the other side and then help someone implement that activity after the workshop? Workshops, the way they go about writing reports, I think the writing of reports is kind of a not an overly effective thing to be doing within an organization. It's kind of like a tick box that, yes, we've done the work, rather than how are we going to help them now implement the work without doing it for them. That's part of the consulting. We're not doing it for people. We're guiding them to outcomes. But that's basically it. You need to look at your entire process on your strategic process and your expertise process, like getting people to a result. And then you need to work back from the start to identify the different milestones. How do we know when we know that it's going the right way? And then within each of those milestones, what is the framework or process to get to each? And so it is mapping. You are mapping out your process. You're going from here to there. And for some people like myself, I really enjoy that. Right? And for other people, they don't enjoy it at all. And so finding partners that you can work with that really do enjoy that process and do enjoy the pulling apart of the different aspects that make you great. I think partnering with somebody or even employing someone to do that, they'll kind of like sit with you and then ask a lot of questions to pull out what's the secret sauce. And then you've got to trial it. You know, I'm a blacksmith. I'm not sure if any of you know this, but I'm a blacksmith in my spare time. I'm an amateur blacksmith. When people ask me what I make a lot of mistakes, right? So there's a lot of things that I do in that. But there's processes in blacksmithing where you can reshape something into this beautiful shape and then quench it, which means to take it from critical heat into water, and it steams up. And At that point in time, it's a perfect shape, right? It's solid and it's hard, but it's fragile. It's like glass. If you dropped it on the ground, it would shatter. So you need to take it through a tempering cycle, which allows it to soften a little bit without it losing too much hardness. That's what the process is within your business. You can create this perfect process, but then you've got to put it through a tempering cycle to make sure it works in most situations, because the outside environment can actually have an effect on your process. And so you want to make sure it's sustainable in that way. So that's the answer to Cam's question. Andreas asks, hopefully I've pronounced that right. Let me know. How do you find what pricing best works for your business? Okay, great. Well, the simple answer to that question is what pricing gets you the outcome you want. And so, what is the outcome you want? Well, it's probably a lifestyle that you want. It's a business earning a certain amount of money. I think it is worth doing the math back from what you ideally want, rather than go, oh, I'll earn whatever's possible. Actually go, what do I want to earn? What do I want to make after profit? What do I want to turn over as a business as far as revenue? And then work back and say, based on how many clients doing how much work, what would I have to charge? Like, what would it look like? Usually what happens is that people either, like, so this is what I did as well. I left a business where I was employed. I knew what I was being charged out at. I knew what my charge out rate was. And then I started, I'm just going to get rid of this question so that we can be talking, we're talking pricing now. I knew what I was charged out at. And so when I started my business, I'm going, well, I know what I was charged out there with all that infrastructure and that business behind me. So I'm going to charge less than that and start from that point of view. And it was a ridiculous mistake. There is absolutely no reason why you would be less valuable as a person focused on an outcome versus a team who's got a bunch of different clients that they're working with. The person who is primarily focused and doing all the work of the management, the communication with the client, is going to be far more valuable. So don't ever charge less than what you were charged out at as an employee. So that's number one. So we step into that space. We understand that. And the big mistake and the learning from that was it took me ages to increase my prices with current clients. And so once you've given someone a price, it makes it difficult to increase the price without changing the opportunity or the product or the offer. All right, you can always change the price by changing the offer. So if you've been working at one price and you want to go to a new price, just tear up what you've said that this thing is and create something new, and then come in with a different price. It's much easier that way. But there's also, one thought is I'll charge out what I was charging or less, or being charged out at less. The other is I'll look at the market and I'll find out what the market's doing, and I'll do less, and that's a confidence thing, right? So if you want confidence, then charge more. There is not a great position in being in the middle. There's nothing good about the middle. So if you're the cheapest, you've got that as a point of difference. You've got that as an advantage. Easier for people to say yes. If you're the most expensive, then that's a point of difference as well, where people go, they have the perception, just like wine, just about any luxury product, that it must be good because it's charged out at this highest rate. And so again, that's another competitive advantage. But there's no competitive advantage of being in the middle, being beige, being boring, being appropriate. Right? None of those things will help you in business. And so here's how I suggest that you do your pricing. Number one, do not do hourly pricing, because you are turning yourself into an employee. Anybody who charges an hourly rate, the person who is engaging you is employing you, whether that's as a contractor or whatever. They are looking at you as an employee. How is this person delivering a thing within the hours that I want to allow? Especially if they start telling you how they want you to deliver things, you're an employee. If you moved out of being an employee in someone else's business to start your own business, you don't want to go back to being an employee, right? So we've got employees, we've got service providers, and then we've got advisors. I suggest every consultant, so these are people who have real expertise, should be in that advisory space. And if you want to be in the advisory space, I'll tell you in just a moment how do you charge for it. But let's say we're at an employee, that's hourly rate. Above that, you've got service deliverer, and that person usually delivers projects. And I know a lot of consultants do get stuck in that model. And I say stuck because they often come to me and they say, well, I'm stuck with these 4 clients and I can't get out of them. I want to do different type of work. I want to do different type of clients, but I've got these these people who've got me locked in, and they can usually only do about 4 projects at once. So they lose one of those, and that's 25% of their entire income. Okay, so that's service delivery. A lot of people will do that. And let me just pull down this blind a little bit. There we go. So the employee, service deliverer, they get judged on their delivery. So often they get paid after delivery, which is horrible. Make sure you're charging at least 50% before any engagement. That's what I recommend. If not everything, you can charge everything up front. You can actually do that, believe it or not, even in a corporate space. Some people think, well, because there's a procurement department that I can't do certain things. No, you need a champion inside the business who will make the business case for you and for the business and actually help step you through the red tape and the procurement, right? So that's part of why I teach conversational sales, and that's why we do the conversational sales work. So you've got employee, service deliverer, and then you've got advisor. Now, if you're an advisor, you are helping people take a step forward, whether that, and there's many different versions of what value is. Sometimes it's about more, but it's often not about more. Sometimes it's about less risk. Sometimes it's about less effort. Sometimes it's about cheaper. Sometimes it's about faster, right? There's multiple different versions of what value is. And those who want to be in the advisory space need to charge on value. So what is value? Well, value is all those things. And if you're talking with a business owner, it's much easier to quantify how those things play out to profit and play out to revenue and costs, right? Costs, saving people on costs is huge. So when you do that, I usually look at 1/10 or 1/20th as being the fee that I would charge for the outcome that they're actually wanting to achieve. All right, depending on my level of confidence and what they're trying to achieve. If I'm doing something that I know is just going to continue to work, it's worked so many times in the past, I'm hyper confident in myself and my abilities and the situation, then I'll charge 1/10. If I'm like, well, we're not so, then I won't make the promises. I certainly won't promise that it's going to get the outcome, but I'll charge a little less. And that's more about me. It's very about me. It's about me and my confidence and my ability to actually do things. But these days, I'm quite focused. I focus in on the actual type of work that I know we'll get great results in. So that's one of the keys. So charging that percentage is a real key. So how do you go about selling that? Well, that's the conversational sales process. That's about priority calls. That's about design calls. And that's what we teach in the Guild and the Forge. All right. So if you're interested in that, you can always reach out to me, or you can go to russellpearsonprograms.com/guild. And so the Consulting Guild is a peer group of consulting professionals that actually work together to grow their business, right? But conversational sales is one of the pieces that we teach in there. So charge on value, and it can be a challenge for people to start selling on value, because often people don't value themselves nearly as high as that they should. And actually, I'm going to just move this thing a little bit, because my glasses keep. There we are. That should be better. Yeah, that's better. So selling on value is a challenge for people who haven't done it before, because it does come down to a confidence thing. If they don't feel confident about the outcome, or they don't want to be involved in the outcome, that's another thing too. I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make them drink. That's the mentality. Well, you can't do things for somebody. But I'll tell you what, you give a horse a salt lick, they're going to drink. All right. So there's certainly ways to influence, and there's ways to help and guide people to decisions. You just got to make sure that you're doing it with the right intent, right? You're doing it to help them take the steps and help them make the decisions, understanding the decisions are not yours, right? As advisors, we sit on the left-hand side of the king, so to speak. We are the Merlins of the Arthur. And so it's not our job to do, it's our job to advise. And anytime Merlin gets himself into trouble, it's always because he actually he thinks he's cleverer than he is, and he seeks power, right? Anytime that happens, he always gets himself into trouble. So don't seek power, work to enable people rather than disable people. So pricing comes down to value. And so you really need to understand quantifiably how much value you're creating. If you don't know that, well, then you've got to do the work. And really, the answer to every single question is do the work, do the work, do the work, do the work. The challenge is, what is the work? Well, in identifying the pricing, it's going to be, part of it is what is value for these people? What are they used to buying? That's another big piece. So you understand where they're at because they're used to buying something at a certain price point. And so you introducing something new, if it's not relevant to the thing that they're used to buying, then they may see it differently. So to give you an example, let's say that we have I'll give you a basic example, then a more complex example. Let's say that we've got a small business person. They're used to buying things like websites, and they're used to buying things like signage, and they those sort of things. And so they have a certain physical element to them. Yeah. And so if people are used to buying those things, then ideally you've got to go, well, this is how they buy. They buy for things that have an outcome that they can see. And so if I can create an outcome that they can see that they would be happy to buy, then they'll buy it, because they buy signage before it's up. They buy the website before it's actually been designed. And so again, we're selling the invisible in both of those places. But how do they, we have to make the visualization of the thing they're going to create tangible. When people think about strategy, when they think about consulting advice, often they're like, it's this nebulous sort of cloud. And so we need to attach it to a very specific outcome or thing that they're going to have at the end of it. And that's really what they're buying. They're buying that thing and that outcome. And so then what is that worth? What is the value of that to them? And then working back from there. Another example is, so in a corporate space, we might be used to charging, I don't know, $5,000 for strategy. That's a pretty standard price for doing a strategic piece. And we go into this corporate market where they're used to buying strategy for $100,000, right? And so they won't take you seriously at 5,000, even if you're incredibly good, right? They won't take you seriously at that. So you've got to understand, you do need to understand the market. You do need to understand the environment. You've got to understand how they buy so that you can identify, how to put yourself in that position. So let's say, just even with the price, someone's selling something at $100,000, you're selling at $5,000. And I actually found myself in this situation once where I got stuck in a quote war. I shouldn't have been there. I never should get into quotes. You don't want to do quotes. You want to work with the person and help them develop the actual outcome. You don't want to be stuck in this place unless that's your complete business model. If you're answering tenders, if that's just what you do, then great. But if you want to actually design with the client, you want to be in a conversation with them. Anyway, I got stuck in this tender thing. And I came in at 25,000. Someone else came in at 15. Someone else came in at 22 or something like that, right? And the person who got the work charged $120,000. And that showed the difference, because there's a perception of higher value, but they actually, what they did, and I didn't do because I didn't go through the processes, early days, bad mistakes made, is that they showed the value. The difference between the work that they did and the work I was going to do was a few additional workshops. And so they were going to work people through a process, and so they were able to show people the process that they were working them through, and they were going to do it with them. So they were going to learn about how to do these things on the way through. So apples to oranges and apples to apples, understanding how do you compare against what other people are offering comes down to, again, you doing the work to understand, what are people offering? How are they offering it? What are people used to buying? What's their expectation? Now, if they haven't bought it before, okay, well, you've got to create the expectation for them. But if they bought stuff before, they already have an expectation in their head. And so how do you know what that expectation is? Well, it's going to be found out through conversation, through diagnostics, through understanding this client and actually doing the work again. But also by doing enough of the work with the similar sort of client, you're going to get a better idea of things. And that's one of the major reasons why for years I played around with the idea of, should we be niching or not? Right? Not me, but the clients and the people I advise. And at the end of the day, I've come to a decision like, yes, you should 100% be niching, right? Because if you're not niching, you are doing a little bit of work there, and you may think, well, it keeps my business interesting, but you don't want your business to be interesting, number one. You want it to be like easy and smooth rather than dramatic. But the reality is, it is still incredibly interesting because every individual that you're working with is completely different. Every individual is different. They're a different use case. They're a different design. You can't design the same thing for one person and then another person, because while you can give them a plan, it won't be implemented the same ways, which means you have to adjust for the people in front of you. If you're not adjusting for the people in front of you, then you will do one plan that'll work and another plan that won't. And so, big mistake, so many strategists do, is that they actually will come in, do an interview process with a business, step away and create the plan, and then just send it through to them. That's how the old adage of the plan that just gets put in the drawer gets created, because that's what ends up happening. If you want to do this stuff effectively, you have to do it with the people. And what I mean by that is not do it for them, but be there with them, so you can help them adjust, help them with their mindset, help them get over certain hurdles that they might have, which might seem easy to you. And every other business you've worked with or every other client you've worked with found it very easy to get over these hurdles. But this one person finds that challenging. That is your role, is to help guide them and manage that complexity. So, Andreas, hopefully that helps you about the pricing. Price on value wherever possible. And then obviously I've given you some of the mistakes to avoid. Any other questions that people want to add, definitely go to consultingquestions.com and add your questions there. I really look forward to receiving them. Till next time, my name's Russell Pearson. Stay passionate, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.